She found him bleeding in the alley behind her diner, begging her not to call for help. Against every instinct, she dragged the stranger upstairs and saved his life. What she didn't know, the man she'd shown mercy to was the head of the city's most dangerous family. And the tattoo on his wrist matched the one in her dead husband's police file. The fluorescent sign above Murphy's diner flickered twice before dying completely. Clara Martinez didn't bother looking up. She'd asked the landlord to fix it 3 times already, and 3 times he'd promised next week. That was 4 months ago. She pulled her jacket tighter against the October wind and locked the front door, her keys jingling in the empty street. 2:47 a.m. Another 12-hour shift done. Her feet screamed inside her worn sneakers, but at least the tips had been decent tonight. $83. Enough for Leo's field trip money and maybe, if she stretched it, a new pair of shoes for him. The kid was growing faster than she could afford. Clara turned toward the parking lot, already thinking about the leftover meatloaf she'd hidden in the back of the fridge for Leo's lunch tomorrow. That's when she heard it. A crash. Metal on metal. Then silence. She froze, one hand still gripping her keys between her fingers the way the self-defense video had taught her. The alley beside the diner was pitch black except for the distant glow of the street lamp on the corner. Keep walking, her brain urged. Not your problem. But then came the sound that changed everything. A wet, rattling cough. Human. Desperate. Clara's heart hammered as she took 3 steps toward the alley entrance. Hello. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Another cough, followed by a scraping sound, like someone trying to drag themselves across pavement. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over 911. The smart thing would be to call first, wait in her car. But what if someone was dying? What if every second mattered? Just like David, whispered the voice in her head. He didn't wait either. Clara stepped into the alley. The smell hit her first, copper and something acrid, like burnt rubber. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she made out a shape slumped against the green dumpster, a dark pool spreading beneath it. Oh God, she rushed forward, phone flashlight blazing. The man was maybe 40, maybe older, hard to tell with all the blood. His expensive suit was shredded on one side, soaked black-red. His breathing came in shallow gasps. But his eyes, even half-conscious, they were alert, tracking her movement with an intensity that made her shiver. I'm calling an ambulance, Clara said, already dialing. His hand shot out faster than should have been possible for someone bleeding out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. No, the word came out as barely more than a whisper, but the command in it was absolute. No hospital. Please. Are you insane? You're dying. Hospital, he coughed, and blood flecked his lips. They'll find me. They'll kill me. And anyone who helped me. Clara's finger hovered over the call button. Every rational cell in her body screamed to press it, to let the professionals handle this, to walk away from whatever nightmare this man had brought into her alley. But she'd heard those words before. Different voice, different night, but the same desperate plea. Don't let them take me to county hospital, Clara. That's where they have people. Just get me home. David had died, anyway, bled out in her arms before she could even start the car. She looked at this stranger's face, gray with shock, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold, and made a decision she knew she'd probably regret. Can you walk? His eyes widened slightly. You're helping me? I'm asking if you can walk. My apartment's upstairs. If you can't make it, this conversation is over, and I'm calling 911. He nodded once, teeth gritted. Clara wedged herself under his arm, nearly buckling under his weight. He was tall, at least 6'2", and solid muscle under that ruined suit. Together, they stumbled toward the metal staircase at the back of the building. Each step was an agony. The man's breathing grew more ragged, and twice Clara thought he'd pass out completely. But somehow, they made it to her door. She had to prop him against the wall while she fumbled with her keys, praying Leo wouldn't wake up, praying Mrs. Chin next door wouldn't hear, praying she wasn't making the biggest mistake of her life. The door swung open. Clara half carried, half dragged the man inside, steering him toward the couch. He collapsed onto it with a groan that he tried to muffle. In the light of her living room, she got her first real look at him. Olive skin, sharp features, expensive watch still gleaming on his wrist despite the blood. This wasn't some random mugging victim. Everything about him screamed money and danger in equal measure. "First aid kit," she muttered, rushing to the bathroom. Her hands shook as she grabbed the white box from under the sink, along with every towel she could carry. When she returned, he'd managed to prop himself into a sitting position, one hand pressed hard against his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. "I need to see it," Clara said, kneeling beside the couch. He hesitated, then slowly moved his hand away. The wound was deep, a gash that ran from his ribs to his hip. Knife wound, she realized with a chill. Someone had tried to gut him. "Mom." Clara's heart stopped. She turned to find Leo standing in the hallway, 7 years old and drowning in his two big Spider-Man pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Baby, go back to bed." "Is he gonna die?" Leo's voice was small, scared, but his dark eyes were fixed on the stranger with unsettling curiosity. The man on her couch looked at her son, and something flickered across his face, pain that had nothing to do with his wound. "Not tonight," Clara said firmly, the same words she'd said when Leo had asked about his father. "Not tonight. Now go to your room. Please." Leo lingered another moment, then shuffled back down the hall. Clara heard his door click shut. She turned back to the stranger, their eyes meeting over the blood-soaked towels. "You need stitches. Real stitches. I can clean this and bandage it, but—" "Do what you can," his voice was steadier now, almost gentle. "Have survived worse." Clara didn't want to know what worse looked like. She worked quickly, cleaning the wound with antiseptic that made him hiss through his teeth, then wrapping it tight with gauze and medical tape. It wasn't pretty, but it would hold until morning. "You can take the couch," she said finally, gathering the bloody towels. "I'll bring you water and some painkillers. In the morning you leave. And we never speak of this again." He nodded slowly. "Thank you. You didn't have to." "No." Clara cut him off. "I didn't. So don't make me regret it." She walked to the kitchen, legs trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. Through the window, she could see the alley below, the dark stain where she'd found him. Behind her, the stranger settled into her couch with a soft groan. "My name," he said quietly, "is Mr. Clara didn't turn around. "I don't want to know your name. I want you gone by sunrise." But even as she said it, she knew she was lying. Because she'd already seen the tattoo on his wrist when she'd bandaged him, a black serpent coiled around a dagger. She'd seen that symbol before. In the police file hidden in her bedroom closet. The one about her husband's murder. Morning light filtered through the cheap blinds, casting striped shadows across Clara's living room. She'd barely slept, spending most of the night in the chair by her bedroom door, ears straining for any sound that might mean danger. Every creak of the building, every distant siren had sent her pulse racing. Now, standing in her kitchen doorway with a cup of coffee clutched in both hands, she watched the stranger sleep. In daylight, he looked different, less like a wounded animal, more like a man who didn't belong on her second-hand couch. Even unconscious, there was something careful about him, controlled. His breathing was steady, one hand resting near his bandaged side. The tattoo on his wrist seemed to pulse in the morning sun. Clara forced herself to look away, to focus on the mundane task of making breakfast. Leo would be up soon, asking questions she couldn't answer. She needed this man gone before her son got too curious, before whatever violence had found him in that alley followed him here. She was cracking eggs into a pan when she heard him stir. "Don't move too fast," she said without turning around. "Those bandages won't hold if you tear the wound open." A pause. Then his voice, rough with sleep and pain. "You're still here." "It's my apartment." Clara flipped the eggs with more force than necessary. "Where else would I be?" "Most people would have called the police the moment I passed out." "Yeah, well, She slid the eggs onto a plate, added 2 pieces of toast. I'm not most people. When she finally turned around, he was sitting up, face pale but alert. His eyes tracked her movement as she approached, that same unsettling intensity from last night. She set the plate on the coffee table, keeping her distance.
Eat.
Then leave. He looked at the food like it was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You made me breakfast. I made breakfast. You happened to be here. Clara crossed her arms. Don't read into it. But he was already reaching for the plate, and she caught the slight tremor in his hand, the way he had to steady himself. Whatever had happened to him, he was in worse shape than he was letting on. Mr. A isn't your real name, she said flatly. No, he took a careful bite of toast, chewed slowly. But it's the only one you need. The only one I need, or the only one that's safe for me to know. His eyes met hers, and for a moment something like respect flickered there. You're smart. That's good. Smart people stay alive. My husband was smart. The words came out harder than she intended. Didn't help him much. The stranger, Mr. A, set down his fork. I'm sorry for your loss. Clara almost laughed.
Sorry.
As if that word meant anything anymore. As if everyone who'd said it at David's funeral hadn't just been going through the motions, relieved it wasn't them in the casket. You said you're an accountant, she said, changing the subject. Funny kind of mugging that gets an accountant stabbed in an alley at 2 a.m. I work late. Wrong place, wrong time, the lie came smoothly practiced. They wanted my wallet, my watch. I fought back. And they just left you there? Didn't finish the job? Maybe they thought they had. Clara studied him, this man who'd probably never balanced a spreadsheet in his life. The expensive suit, the confident way he held himself despite the pain, the tattoo he'd made no effort to hide, it all told a different story. But her life was too fragile to invite trouble, too precarious to start asking questions that might have dangerous answers. She had Leo to think about, rent due in 2 weeks, a dead-end job that barely kept them fed. Fine, she said finally. You're an accountant. And I'm the Queen of England. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Fair enough, Mom. They both turned as Leo emerged from the hallway, hair sticking up at odd angles, dragging his worn stuffed rabbit by one ear. His dark eyes went immediately to the stranger on the couch. Hey, baby, Clara moved to intercept him, but Leo ducked under her arm with the easy agility of a 7-year-old. You're still here, Leo said, stopping a few feet from the couch. Mom said you weren't gonna die. Your mother was right. Mr. A's voice changed when he spoke to Leo, softer, careful. I'm much better now. Did it hurt? The stabbing?
La.
Clara grabbed her son's shoulder. That's not. Yes, Mr. A interrupted quietly. It hurt very much. Leo nodded solemnly, as if this confirmed something important. Then he spotted the plate on the coffee table. You made him Mom's special eggs. Clara felt her cheeks warm. They're just eggs, Leo.
Nah.
You only make them like that for special people. You made them for Dad before he... Leo stopped, glancing at his mother's face. The silence stretched too long. Clara saw Mr. A's expression shift, something unreadable passing across his features. He was looking at Leo the way people sometimes looked at old photographs, with a weight that didn't match the moment. I need to get ready for school, Leo announced suddenly, breaking the tension. He started toward his room, then paused. Are you going to be here when I get home? No, Clara said firmly. At the same moment Mr. A said, I don't think so. Leo shrugged, unbothered by adult complications. Okay. Bye, mister. He disappeared down the hall, and Clara heard his door close. She turned back to Mr. A, ready to reinforce the boundaries, to make it absolutely clear this was a one-night arrangement. But he was staring at the hallway where Leo had vanished, and his hand had moved unconsciously to his side, pressing against the bandage. His face had gone even paler, and for a moment, she thought the wound had reopened. Are you? I need to use your bathroom, he said abruptly, pushing himself up from the couch with visible effort. If that's all right, Clara pointed. Second door on the left. She watched him make his way down the hall, moving like every step cost him. When the bathroom door clicked shut, she finally exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Through the thin walls, she heard the water running. Then nothing for a long moment. Then what might have been a stifled sound, pain, or something else. Clara looked at the hallway, at Leo's closed door, at the plate of half-eaten eggs, at the life she'd carefully built from the ruins of her old one. And she wondered what she'd really brought into her home last night. What monster she'd saved. By the time Clara got Leo ready for school, Mr. A had returned to the couch, looking steadier, but somehow more distant. He'd washed his face, slicked back his dark hair, and the transformation was remarkable. He looked almost normal, like he could walk into any office building and belong there. Almost. "I'll drive you," Clara said to Leo, grabbing her keys. She didn't want to leave the stranger alone in her apartment, but she also couldn't let her son walk to school. Not today. Not with this kind of chaos in their lives. "I can take the bus," Leo protested. Not today. Her tone left no room for argument. The drive to Jefferson Elementary took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of Leo chattering about his friend Marcus's birthday party next week, about the math test he was worried about normal 7-year-old things that felt surreal given what was waiting back at her apartment. "Mom," Leo asked as she pulled up to the drop-off zone, "is that man gonna hurt us?" Clara's hands tightened on the steering wheel.
No, baby.
"He's not." Okay, Leo unbuckled his seatbelt, then paused. Dad would have helped him too, right? The question hit her like a punch to the chest. "Yeah," she managed. "Dad would have helped him too." Leo smiled, satisfied with this answer, and bounded out of the car toward the school entrance. Clara watched until he disappeared through the doors, then sat there for another minute, trying to steady her breathing. David would have helped. That was the problem. David had always helped, always gotten involved, always believed he could make a difference. And it had gotten him killed. When she returned to the apartment, she expected to find it empty. Instead, Mr. A was still there, standing by her kitchen window, looking down at the alley where she'd found him. He'd put on one of David's old shirts that she'd left draped over a chair. It fit him almost perfectly. "I thought you'd be gone." He turned, and she saw he was holding something. Leo's crayon box. "Your son left these on the coffee table. I was going to put them away." Clara crossed the room and took the box from him. "You should be resting. Or leaving. Preferably leaving." "I'll go tonight," he said. "I just need," he winced, hand moving to his side. "A few more hours." She wanted to argue, to push him out the door right now. But the practical part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive through David's death and the hard years after, knew he couldn't make it far in his condition. If he collapsed on the street, if someone found him, if they traced him back here.
Fine.
Tonight. But you stay out of sight, and if anyone comes to the door, you hide in Leo's room. Understood? He nodded once. Understood. Clara left him there and went to get ready for her shift at the diner. But when she emerged from her bedroom 20 minutes later, she found something that made her stop in her tracks. Mr. A was sitting on the floor by the coffee table, and Leo's crayons were spread out in front of him. He'd pulled out Leo's sketch pad, the cheap one Clara had bought him at the dollar store, and was staring at the most recent drawing. "That's private," Clara said sharply. He looked up, and there was something broken in his eyes. "Your son. He drew this today." She moved closer, looking at the picture over his shoulder. It was typical Leo, a chaotic explosion of color and imagination. A red fire truck with exaggerated wheels. Yellow and orange flames shooting up from what might have been a building. And in the corner, a small stick figure with tears coming down its face. "He draws a lot of fire trucks," Clara said, unsure why she felt the need to explain. "He wants to be a firefighter when he grows up." Mr. A's hand was shaking. He set the sketch pad down carefully, like it might shatter. "The fire," he whispered. "The explosion. The child crying." "What?" But he was already standing, backing away from the coffee table like it had burned him. His face had gone sheet white, and his breathing was coming too fast. He turned toward the hallway, stumbled. Excuse me. Clara watched him disappear into the bathroom again, heard the door lock. Then silence. She looked back at Leo's drawing, trying to see what had triggered such a reaction. It was just a kid's picture. Nothing special, nothing unusual. Leo had been drawing fire trucks since he was 4, ever since he'd seen the firefighters who'd tried to save David.
Tried.
The word echoed in her mind as she heard the water running in the bathroom, heard what sounded like heavy breathing, maybe crying. Clara picked up the sketch pad, flipping through the other drawings. More fire trucks. A dinosaur. Their apartment building. A superhero that was probably supposed to be Spider-Man. Normal things. But on the second-to-last page, she found something that made her breath catch. Leo had drawn 3 men. They were just stick figures, but he'd been careful with the details, dark suits, something that might have been guns in their hands. Behind them, a black car with exaggerated wheels, like the fire trucks but different. Scarier. And in the corner, smaller, was a figure on the ground. Red crayon spilled around it. When had Leo drawn this? She tried to remember, but the past few weeks had been such a blur of double shifts and exhaustion that she couldn't pin it down. The bathroom door opened, and Mr. A emerged. He'd splashed water on his face, but she could see the redness around his eyes, the way his hands were still trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I don't know what." He stopped, seeing the drawing in her hands. "Where did he see that?" "See what?" "The men. The car. Where did your son see them?" Clara's heart started pounding. "He didn't. It's just his imagination. He draws things he sees on TV, in books." "That's not imagination." Mr. A moved closer, pointing at the black car. "That's a '67 Cadillac Eldorado. Very specific. Very rare." His finger moved to the figures. "And those aren't toy guns. See the way he drew them? Extended barrels. Those are suppressors. You're seeing things that aren't there. He's 7 years old. I'm seeing things that are." Mr. A looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something that terrified her more than the blood in the alley, more than the tattoo on his wrist. She saw certainty. Children see the truth before they learn to look away. Your son drew what he witnessed. Clara's mouth went dry. That's insane. Is it? He turned to the window, looking down at the alley again. Tell me something. Your husband. How did he die? She didn't want to answer, but the words came anyway, pulled out by the weight of his gaze. Car bomb. 3 years ago. They said it was gang-related. Wrong place, wrong time. Mr. A was quiet for a long moment. Then, what was your husband's name? Why does it matter? Please. David, she whispered. David Martinez. The name hung in the air between them. Mr. A closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, there were tears there. I know that name, he said softly. God help me, I know that name. Clara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. What are you talking about? But before he could answer, they heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Heavy, deliberate. Multiple people. Then a knock at the door. Clara Martinez? A man's voice, deep and authoritative. This is Detective Morrison, LAPD. We need to ask you some questions about an incident last night. Mr. A's hand went to his side, and Clara saw him calculating distances, exits, options. His whole body had tensed, ready for violence. Don't, she hissed. Don't you dare. Another knock, harder this time. Ms. Martinez? We know you're home. Your car's in the lot. Clara looked at the man in her living room. This stranger who knew her dead husband's name, who saw things in her son's drawings that shouldn't be there, who'd brought police to her door. And she made another choice she knew she'd regret. Closet, she whispered, pointing to the hallway. Now. And don't make a sound. Mr. A hesitated for only a second before moving silently down the hallway. Clara waited until she heard the closet door ease shut, then counted to 3, forcing her face into a mask of tired confusion before opening the front door. Detective Morrison was exactly what she expected, mid-50s, gray at the temples, the kind of weathered face that had seen too much and believed too little. His partner was younger, A woman with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones, notebook already in hand. Ms. Martinez? Morrison flashed his badge. Sorry to bother you so early. I'm Detective Morrison. This is Detective Chen. We're investigating an assault that occurred in the alley behind your building last night. Clara's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. An assault? Is everyone okay? That's what we're trying to determine. Chen was studying her face, looking for cracks. Were you working last night? Yeah, I closed up the diner around 2:30.
Why?
Did you see or hear anything unusual? Anyone in the alley? Clara shook her head, the lie coming easier than it should have. No, nothing. I went straight to my car and came home. Is this about a mugging or something? Morrison exchanged a glance with his partner. We found a significant amount of blood in that alley. And security footage from the convenience store across the street shows someone matching your description entering the alley at approximately 2:47 a.m. The bottom dropped out of Clara's stomach. I might have heard something. A noise. I looked, but I didn't see anyone, so I left. You didn't think to call 911? Chen's pen hovered over her notebook. In this neighborhood? Detective, I hear noises every night. Cats, homeless people, kids messing around. If I called the cops every time, they'd stop showing up. Morrison's expression softened slightly. He probably knew she was right. The blood indicates someone was seriously injured. If you saw something, anything, it could help us.
I'm sorry.
I really didn't see anything. Clara glanced at her watch, a calculated move. Look, I need to get ready for work. If I remember something, I'll call, okay? Chun handed her a card. Please do. And, Ms. Martinez? If someone approaches you, if you see anything suspicious, call immediately. The person who was injured in that alley is dangerous. We have reason to believe he's connected to organized crime. The words hit like ice water. Clara took the card with steady fingers. I will. Thank you, detectives. She closed the door and stood there, not moving, listening to their footsteps retreat down the stairs. Only when she heard their car start did she allow herself to breathe. They're gone, she said quietly. The closet door opened, and Mr. A emerged. His face was unreadable, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand stayed near his side where a weapon might be if he had won. You lied for me. I lied for myself, Clara shot back. If they knew you were here, I'd be arrested for harboring a fugitive or whatever they call it. My son would end up in foster care. So don't think I did it for you. But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Mr. A moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight as he looked down at the street. They'll canvass the building. Talk to your neighbors. Someone might have seen us. Mrs. Chun is half-deaf and Mr. Kowalski works nights. No one saw anything. Clara's mind was racing. You need to leave.
Now.
Before they come back with a warrant or more questions. I will, he turned from the window. But first, you need to know something about your husband. Don't, the word came out sharp, cutting. Don't you dare use David to manipulate me. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to warn you. He took a step closer, and Clara saw the desperation in his eyes. David Martinez was a police informant. He was feeding information about the Moretti family to the FBI. Clara's vision tunneled. That's a lie. 3 years ago, there was supposed to be a meeting. David was going to testify, bring down half the organization. But someone found out. They put a bomb in his car. Stop it. Clara's hands were shaking now, rage and fear mixing into something toxic. My husband was a social worker. He helped kids, families. He wasn't involved in anything like that. He helped the wrong family. Mr. A's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. A woman named Teresa Giordano. She was trying to leave her husband, Vincent Giordano, one of Moretti's captains. David helped her get into a shelter, helped her disappear. Vincent found out, and he went to the bosses. They wanted to make an example. No, but even as Clara denied it, pieces were clicking into place. The late-night calls David would take in the bathroom. The way he'd started checking the car every morning before starting it. The life insurance policy he'd suddenly insisted on getting. If anything happens to me, it won't be by Moretti's hand. The note. She'd found it after, tucked into his copy of The Joy of Cooking, where he knew she'd look eventually. She'd thought it was paranoia, grief talking from beyond the grave. But what if it was a warning? Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the couch, the same couch where this stranger, this criminal, had slept.
Who are you?
Really? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to the coffee table and slowly, deliberately, rolled up his sleeve further, revealing the full tattoo. The black serpent coiled around a dagger, and beneath it, in small script, Famiglia Prima. Family first. My name is Adrian Moretti, he said quietly. And your husband died, because of my family. The room spun. Clara had seen that name in the police files, heard it whispered in the diner by cops who came in for coffee. Adrian Moretti, the heir, the enforcer, the man they could never quite catch. You killed him, her voice was hollow.
No.
But I couldn't stop it. Adrian's face was raw, exposed. I tried. When I found out about the order, I went to Vincent, tried to talk him down. But I was too late. By the time I got there, David was already. He stopped, swallowed hard. I'm the reason they blamed me for his death. Because I was there. Because I tried to pull him out of the car. Because I failed. Clara's mind was reeling, trying to process. The tattoo. I saw it last night. In the police file. They said anyone with that mark was part of the family. They were right. Then why did your own people try to kill you? Adrian smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because after David died, after I saw what we'd done to an innocent man who was just trying to help someone, I started asking questions. Making trouble. My second in command, Vico, saw an opportunity. He leaked information about my doubts to the others, made it look like I was going to flip, become an informant like David. Last night was supposed to be a meeting. Instead, it was an execution. And you came here.
To me.
To David's widow, Clara felt hysteria bubbling up. Were you trying to get absolution? Clear your conscience. I didn't know, Adrian's voice cracked. I swear to God, I didn't know whose wife you were until this morning. Until I saw that picture, on your mantel. David in his uniform, at some kind of ceremony. I recognized him immediately. Clara looked at the photo, he meant. David receiving an award for community service, grinning like he'd won the lottery. She'd kept it there because it was how she wanted Leo to remember his father.
Happy. Proud. Alive.
Get out, she whispered. Clara. Get out of my house. Get out and never come back. Adrian nodded slowly. He moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, your husband was a good man. Better than anyone in my world. And Leo, his voice softened. He has his father's eyes. His courage too, I think. Don't talk about my son. Don't even think about him. I won't. Adrian opened the door. Check the hallway. But Clara? The men who did this to me, they know about witnesses, about loose ends. If they think for a second that I survived, they'll come looking. And they'll talk to everyone I might have contacted. Ice flooded Clara's veins. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Stay alert. If you see anyone suspicious, anyone asking questions, call the police. Call Detective Morrison. Don't try to handle it yourself. He slipped out the door and was gone, moving silently despite his injury. Clara sat on her couch, staring at nothing, her world crumbling around her. Everything she believed about David, about his death, about the safe little life she'd built, it was all built on lies. And now those lies had found her. She looked at the police detective's card in her hand, then at the hallway where Adrian Moretti had hidden, where her son would be drawing his strange, prophetic pictures when he came home from school. Clara pulled out her phone and pulled up the photo she'd taken of David's note years ago. The one she'd kept as a digital backup, but never really looked at again. If anything happens to me, it won't be by Moretti's hand. Her finger trembled as she zoomed in on the handwriting, looking at it with new eyes. And there, in the corner she'd never noticed before, were two more words in David's careful script. Trust Adrian. Clara called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. She couldn't face the diner, couldn't pretend to smile at customers while her entire world was disintegrating. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table, David's old police files spread out in front of her, reading reports she'd only skimmed before because they'd hurt too much. Now they hurt for different reasons. The file mentioned the Moretti family 14 times. Vincent Giordano, 6 times. But Adrian Moretti's name appeared only twice, once as a person of interest and once in a witness statement from a traffic camera that had caught him near the scene 20 minutes after the explosion. Not before.
After.
I tried to pull him out of the car. Clara's hands shook as she found the crime scene photos she'd never been able to look at. She forced herself to look now. The burned-out shell of David's Honda. The debris scattered across the parking lot. And there, in one photo marked Evidence 14B, a bloody handprint on the driver's side door. The report noted it didn't match David's blood type. Someone had tried to open the door after the explosion. The doorbell made her jump. She shoved the file into a drawer and checked the peephole. Mrs. Chun from next door, holding a casserole dish. Clara opened the door, trying to look normal. Mrs. Chun, hi. I saw the police here this morning, the elderly woman said, her accent thick. I worry. You okay?
I've fine.
Just routine questions about something in the alley. Mrs. Chun frowned, unconvinced, but handed over the casserole. You eat. You too skinny. That boy needs strong mama. Thank you. Clara took the dish, its warmth seeping through the ceramic. Really, we're okay. After Mrs. Chun shuffled away, Clara set the casserole on the counter and returned to the file. But her phone buzzed before she could open the drawer again. Jefferson Elementary. Her heart stopped. Ms. Martinez? This is Principal Dawson. Leo's fine, but we need you to come pick him up. What happened? He got into an altercation with another student. No one's hurt, but he's quite upset. He's been asking for you. 20 minutes later, Clara found Leo sitting in the principal's office, arms crossed, tear tracks on his face. He looked so small in the big leather chair, so scared. She wanted to scoop him up and run, take him somewhere far away from Mafia families and dead husbands and secrets that kept multiplying. Baby, what happened? Marcus said Daddy was a snitch. Leo's voice was small, broken. He said his dad said that Daddy deserved what he got. So I pushed him. Clara's blood ran cold. Marcus's dad said that. Principal Dawson shifted uncomfortably. We'll be speaking with Marcus's family about appropriate conversations around children. But Leo, we've talked about using our words, not our hands. I understand. Clara cut her off gently. Can I take him home now? In the car, Leo was silent, staring out the window. Clara drove on autopilot, her mind racing. Marcus's father was a cop. She'd met him at a school event last year. Officer Richard Boyd, smug smile. Handshake too firm. How much did the police know? How long had they known? Mom. Leo's voice was tiny. What's a snitch? Clara pulled into their parking lot and turned off the engine. She looked at her son, this beautiful boy who had David's dark eyes and curious mind, and made a decision. It means someone who tells the truth when bad people don't want them to, she said carefully. Your dad helped people who needed help, even when it was dangerous. That made some people angry. But telling the truth is good. It is, baby. It is. They climbed the stairs to their apartment, and Clara's hand froze on the doorknob. It was unlocked. She always locked it. Always. Stay behind me, she whispered to Leo. She pushed the door open slowly. The apartment looked undisturbed, but something felt wrong. Then she saw it. On the coffee table, a single white envelope with her name written in elegant script. Clara checked every room, every closet, every window. All secure. But someone had been here. Someone who could pick locks, move silently, leave no trace except what they wanted to leave. Go to your room, she told Leo.
But Mom.
Now, please. Once Leo's door closed, Clara opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of expensive paper and 3 photographs. The letter was short. Clara, I couldn't leave without giving you answers. The photos are from 3 years ago, the night David died. I kept them as insurance, but you deserve to see them more than I deserve to use them. The first photo, David and Teresa Giordano, the woman he was helping. She's alive, by the way. Living in Oregon under a new name with her daughter. David saved her life. The second photo, Vincent Giordano placing the device under David's car. I took this from a distance, too far away to stop it, close enough to document it. The third photo, me, pulling David from the wreckage. I was too late. I'm sorry. You asked why my own people want me dead. The truth is, I've been collecting evidence for months. Names, dates, crimes. Everything. I was going to finish what David started. But I realized something this morning. I can't undo the past. I can't bring your husband back. All I can do is make sure his death wasn't meaningless. The flash drive taped to the back of this paper contains everything. Give it to Detective Morrison. Tell him it's from an anonymous source.
Don't mention my name.
Don't mention that we met. You saved my life, Clara. Now let me try to save yours. Clara's hands trembled as she looked at the photos. David, alive, standing with a frightened woman and a little girl. Vincent Giordano, his face clear in the streetlight, crouched by a car's undercarriage. And Adrian, younger but unmistakable, his clothes covered in soot and blood, cradling David's body against his chest, his face twisted in anguish. She peeled the back of the paper. The flash drive was there, smaller than her thumbnail, containing evidence that could destroy an entire criminal organization. Mom. Clara spun around. Leo stood in his doorway, holding his sketch pad. I drew something else, he said quietly. Last night, while you were sleeping. He held up the pad. Clara's breath caught. The drawing was more detailed than the others. 3 men in dark suits, but this time their faces were visible, crude crayon representations, but distinctive enough. One had a scar on his cheek. One wore glasses. And one was younger, with dark hair and what looked like a tattoo on his wrist. Behind them was a building that looked remarkably like their apartment complex. And in the window of one apartment, their apartment, were 2 stick figures. One tall, one small. When did you see these men? Clara's voice didn't sound like her own. I didn't see them, Leo said, confused. I dreamed them. They were looking for something. Someone. He pointed to the figure with the tattoo. This one was nice, I think. But the other ones were scary. Clara knelt down, pulling Leo close. Listen to me, baby. This is very important. If you ever see these men, any of them, you run to Mrs. Chen's apartment and you call 911. Do you understand? You're scaring me.
I know. I'm sorry.
But do you understand? Leo nodded against her shoulder. Are the bad men coming here? Clara looked at the flash drive in her hand, at Adrian's photos, at her son's prophetic drawings. She thought about David's note, trust Adrian, and about the man who'd tried to save her husband, who'd spent 3 years collecting evidence, who'd warned her even after she'd thrown him out. I don't know, she admitted, but we're going to be ready. She pulled out Detective Morrison's card and stared at it for a long moment. One phone call, and she could hand over everything. End this. Let the police handle it. But something held her back. If Adrian was right, if Vico and his men thought for even a second that Adrian had survived and passed information to someone, they wouldn't stop. They'd eliminate every potential witness. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello. Heavy breathing. Then a voice digitally distorted. We know he was there. We know you helped him. Tell us where Moretti is and your son lives. The line went dead. Clara looked at Leo at his drawings at the flash drive. And she realized Adrian had been wrong about one thing. He hadn't saved her life. He'd ended it. Clara's hands shook so violently, she nearly dropped the phone. She looked at Leo, still clutching his sketch pad, oblivious to the threat that had just been made against his life. Baby, pack a bag. Clothes for 3 days, your toothbrush, Mr. Hoppy. She kept her voice steady through sheer force of will. Are we going somewhere? We're going to visit Aunt Rachel. The lie came automatically. Rachel, David's sister, Lived 2 hours away in San Diego. Far enough to matter. But I have school tomorrow. You're getting a vacation day. Clara was already moving, grabbing her own bag, throwing in essentials. Her hands found David's old prepaid phone in the back of her nightstand drawer, the one she'd kept for emergencies, still charged, untraceable. She called Rachel. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to not ask questions. Clara? What's wrong? I'm sending Leo to you on a bus. He'll be at the downtown station in 2 hours. Can you pick him up? A bus? Clara, what's going on? Please, Ratch. I'll explain later. Just keep him safe. A pause. Then, okay, I'll be there. Clara hung up and knelt in front of Leo. Listen carefully. You're going to take a bus to Aunt Rachel's house. It'll be an adventure, like we've talked about. You're a big boy, and I need you to be brave. You're not coming? Not yet. I have to take care of something first. But I'll come get you in a few days, I promise. She pulled him close, breathing in the strawberry scent of his shampoo. I love you more than anything in this world. You know that, right? I know, Mom. His voice was muffled against her shoulder. Are you in trouble? No, baby. I'm just being careful. 45 minutes later, she watched Leo board the Greyhound to San Diego, Mr. Hoppy clutched under his arm. She'd given him her phone to play games on, put $60 in his pocket, and made him memorize Rachel's address and phone number. He looked so small climbing those bus steps. The bus pulled away. Clara stood in the parking lot until it disappeared, then got in her car and drove. Not home. She couldn't go home. Instead, she drove to the one place she thought might have answers. The Holy Name Catholic Church on West Adams, where David used to volunteer. Where Father Miguel had presided over his funeral, had held her hand while she cried, had promised that justice would come eventually. The church was quiet in the late afternoon, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. Father Miguel was in his office, bent over paperwork. Clara, he stood immediately, concern creasing his weathered face. My child, what's wrong? I need to see the records. From 3 years ago. The donations, the volunteers, everything from the month before David died. Father Miguel hesitated. Clara, those records are confidential. David was helping someone. A woman named Teresa Giordano. I know she came here. I know he met with her through your outreach program. Clara's voice cracked. Please, Father. Someone threatened my son today. I need to understand what David was involved in. The priest's face paled. He closed the office door and locked it. Sit down. You knew. The realization hit Clara like a fist. You knew what David was doing. I knew he was helping a woman escape an abusive situation. I didn't know. Father Miguel rubbed his face. I didn't know who her husband was until after. Until the police came asking questions. Until David was gone. Clara, what David did was noble. Teresa and her daughter were in mortal danger. He saved their lives. And it cost him his own. Clara pulled out Adrian's photos, spreading them on the desk. Did you know about this? About Adrian Moretti? Father Miguel picked up the photo of Adrian pulling David from the wreckage. His hands trembled. Where did you get this? Does it matter? Adrian Moretti came here 2 weeks after David died. He sat in the confession booth for 3 hours. The priest's voice was barely above a whisper. He told me everything. The guilt was destroying him. He said he'd tried to save David, tried to stop it, but he was too late. He asked me how to make amends for a sin he didn't commit but couldn't prevent. What did you tell him? I told him that redemption doesn't come from guilt. It comes from action. From making different choices going forward. Father Miguel looked at her. Is Adrian alive? Is that why someone threatened Leo? Clara nodded slowly. I helped him. I didn't know who he was, but I helped him, and now his people think I know where he is. Do you?
No.
He left this morning, and I haven't heard from him since. She pulled out the flash drive. But he left me this. Evidence against his own family. And I don't know what to do with it. Before Father Miguel could respond, Clara's borrowed prepaid phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She answered, her voice cold. What do you want? Ms. Martinez, a different voice this time, smooth and cultured. My name is Vico Santoro. I believe you've met my associate, Adrian. I don't know what you're talking about.
Please.
We saw the security footage. We know he went into that alley bleeding. We know you went in after him. We know he didn't come out. Vico's voice remained pleasant, almost friendly. We also know your son just boarded a bus to San Diego. Seat 14B, if I'm not mistaken. Clara's blood turned to ice. If you touch him. I'm not a monster, Ms. Martinez. I don't hurt children. But I do need to find Adrian. He is something that belongs to me. Information that could be very damaging if it fell into the wrong hands.
He's dead.
He died in that alley. Then you won't mind if we search your apartment? Thoroughly. Clara looked at Father Miguel, at the flash drive on his desk.
Fini.
Search all you want. You won't find anything. We already are. Vico's smile was audible. My men are there right now. Unfortunately, they're making quite a mess. Shame about all your late husband's belongings. The photos, the mementos. Particularly flammable memories. You son of a... I'll give you 4 hours. If Adrian contacts you, if you know where he is, you tell him to meet me at the old 7th Street warehouse at midnight. Come alone, and I'll let you and your son disappear. No one else has to die. But if he doesn't show, Vico paused.
Well,
accidents happen. Even on buses. The line went dead. Clara stood there, shaking with rage and terror. They're going to hurt Leo. They're going to hurt my son because of something David started and Adrian couldn't finish. Father Miguel picked up the flash drive. Or you finish it for both of them. What? Adrian gave you this for a reason. Not just to turn over to the police, but to use. To protect yourself. The priest's eyes were steady. David used to say you were the strongest person he knew. That you could survive anything. Maybe it's time to prove him right. Clara looked at the flash drive, at the photos, at the evidence that could destroy the Moretti family. An idea was forming. Dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it was the only card she had left to play. I need to make a call, she said quietly. To someone who's not going to like what I have to say. She pulled out Detective Morrison's card and dialed. When he answered, she spoke clearly. Detective, this is Clara Martinez. I lied to you this morning. Adrian Moretti was in my apartment. And I know where he's going to be at midnight tonight. Father Miguel closed his eyes, his lips moving in silent prayer. Clara hoped someone was listening. Because she was about to walk into hell, and she wasn't sure she'd walk back out. Detective Morrison arrived at the church within 20 minutes, his partner Chin right behind him. Clara watched them approach through Father Miguel's office window, their faces grim and focused. She'd gambled everything on this moment, on the hope that the law could protect her better than lies could. Ms. Martinez, Morrison's voice was clipped as he entered. You want to tell me why you're wasting police time with a false report this morning, then calling about a wanted fugitive this afternoon? Because this morning I was scared. Now I'm terrified. Clara gestured to the photos on the desk. And I need your help. Chin picked up the photo of Adrian pulling David from the car. Her eyes widened. Where did you get this? Adrian Moretti gave it to me. Along with these, Clara handed over the flash drive. He said it contains evidence about my husband's murder. About the whole Moretti organization. Morrison studied the photo, his jaw tight. Your husband, David Martinez. The social worker killed 3 years ago. He wasn't just a social worker. You know that. The file says he was an informant. That information was classified. My husband is dead. Clara's voice cracked. Classified doesn't mean anything to me. I want to know the truth. All of it. Morrison exchanged a look with Chun, then sighed heavily. Sit down, Ms. Martinez. I don't want to sit down. I want answers. Then you'll get them. But you're not going to like them. Morrison pulled out his own folder, worn and thick. David Martinez came to us 2 years before he died. Teresa Giordano had approached him for help leaving her husband. When David dug into Vincent Giordano's background, he realized the danger she was in. He also realized he'd stumbled onto something bigger. The Moretti family. A whole network of trafficking, extortion, murder. David had access because Teresa trusted him. She'd overheard conversations, seen documents. David convinced her to let him document everything before she disappeared. Morrison's voice softened. He was brave. Reckless, but brave. And you let him do it. You let him put himself in danger. We offered protection.
He refused.
Said it would tip off the Morettas, put Teresa and her daughter at risk. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. We didn't want him dead, Ms. Martinez. We tried to stop him. Clara felt her knees weaken. Father Miguel guided her into a chair. The note, she whispered. David left a note saying it wouldn't be by Moretti's hand. What did he mean? Morrison hesitated. We think he meant Adrian Moretti specifically. Our surveillance indicated Adrian was trying to broker peace, to talk Vincent down from retaliation. David believed Adrian was different from the others, that he could be reasoned with. Was he right? I don't know. Adrian Moretti has been suspected in at least 6 murders. But Morrison tapped the photo. This doesn't look like a man celebrating a kill. He said he tried to save David, that he was too late. He was there 20 minutes after the explosion. We have traffic camera footage of him arriving, running to the car. We always wondered why. Chen leaned forward. Ms. Martinez, where is Adrian now? Clara took a breath. I don't know. He left my apartment this morning. But Vico Santoro called me an hour ago. He threatened my son. He wants Adrian at the 7th Street warehouse at midnight, or, her voice broke, or Leo dies. Morrison stood abruptly. Where's your son now? On a bus to my sister-in-law's in San Diego. But they know. They're watching him. Chin, get units to intercept that bus. Full protection detail. Morrison pulled out his radio. We're taking Santoro down tonight.
No.
Clara grabbed his arm. If you go in with police, Vico will know. He'll have people watching. He'll what? Kill your son, anyway. Morrison's face was hard. Ms. Martinez, this is what we do. Let us handle it. You didn't handle it 3 years ago. David died because you couldn't protect him. The words hung in the air, brutal and true. Morrison's jaw worked, but he didn't argue. Father Miguel spoke up quietly. Perhaps there's another way. If Adrian knew about the meeting. We're not using a civilian as bait, Chin said firmly. I'm already bait. Clara stood, steadying herself. Vico thinks I can deliver Adrian. That's my leverage. If I go in there, if I can stall long enough. Absolutely not. Then what? Clara's voice rose. You storm in, Vico makes a phone call, and my son dies on a highway somewhere? I can't. Tears spilled over. I can't lose him too. He's all I have left. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, show me what's on that drive. Father Miguel's computer was old, but it worked. Chun plugged in the flash drive, and they watched in silence as folders appeared. Financial records. Photos of meetings.
Audio recordings.
Names, dates, locations, years of evidence, meticulously documented.
Jesus Chambriated.
This is everything. Wire fraud, racketeering, 3 unsolved homicides. Vincent Giordano, Morrison said, pointing to a photo. That's him placing the device under a car. The timestamp. He looked at Clara, his expression shifting. This is your husband's car. The night he died.
Clara forced herself to look.
Vincent, crouched by the Honda's undercarriage, his face clear in the streetlight.
Proof.
Undeniable proof. There's a video file, Chin said, clicking it open. Adrian's face filled the screen, haggard and bruised. The timestamp showed it was from 2 days ago. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead, Adrian's recorded voice said. My name is Adrian Michael Moretti, and I want to confess to my role in the following crimes. For 20 minutes, they watched as Adrian detailed everything. Not just his family's crimes, but his own. The people he'd hurt, the laws he'd broken, the blood on his hands. He spoke clearly, calmly, like a man who'd accepted his fate. But I need to be clear about one thing, Adrian said near the end. David Martinez was killed on Vincent Giordano's orders, with approval from my uncle, Carlo Moretti. I tried to prevent it. I failed. That failure has haunted me every day since. If this recording helps bring them to justice, then maybe David's death won't be meaningless. The video ended. The office was silent. He's confessing to everything, Morrison said slowly. With this testimony, we can— It's not enough, Clara interrupted. Is it? Without Adrian alive to testify, without corroboration. It's a start. Combined with the other evidence, we can build a case. How long? Months? Years? Clara shook her head. I don't have that kind of time. Leo doesn't have that kind of time. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Your son just got off at a rest stop.
Cute kid.
Shame if something happened. Attached was a photo, Leo, standing by a vending machine, Mr. Hoppy under his arm, completely unaware of the danger. Clara's vision tunneled. They're following him. Right now. We'll get units there. Morrison started. There's no time. Clara grabbed the flash drive, her hands shaking. I'm going to that warehouse. I'm going to give Vico this drive and tell him Adrian's dead. That this is all that's left. Maybe he'll take it and leave us alone. He'll kill you the moment you hand it over. Then wire me. Send backup. But let me try. Clara looked Morrison in the eye. My husband trusted you people and died for it. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm telling you this is happening. With or without your help. Morrison stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. Chun, call SWAT. Tell them we're setting up a sting operation at the 7th Street warehouse. Full tactical support, but they stay back until my signal. He turned to Clara. You're going to do exactly what I say when I say it. Understood? Clara nodded, her heart pounding.
Good.
Because we've got 6 hours to set a trap for the most dangerous crime family in Los Angeles. Morrison's smile was grim. And if anything goes wrong, we're all dead. Father Miguel made the sign of the cross. God be with you, my children. Clara touched the photos of David one last time, then followed the detectives out into the dying light. Behind them, on the computer screen, Adrian's frozen face stared out, a ghost confessing to ghosts. The 7th Street warehouse loomed against the night sky like a rotting tooth. Clara sat in her car 2 blocks away, the wire taped between her shoulder blades feeling like ice against her skin. Detective Morrison's voice crackled in her nearly invisible earpiece. SWAT's in position. Snipers on the roofs, tactical units in the adjacent buildings. Remember, you're just there to make contact. The moment you confirm Vico's presence, you give the signal and get out. What's the signal again? Clara's voice shook. You say, I need fresh air, that's it. Simple. Then you drop and we move in. Clara looked at the flash drive in her hand. The real one was with the police, being copied and analyzed. This was a dummy. Identical on the outside, but empty inside. If Vico checked it before she could get out. Ms. Martinez, you don't have to do this. Chen's voice came through. We can abort right now. And Leo? Clara closed her eyes, seeing that photo of her son at the rest stop. 2 patrol units had picked him up 20 minutes ago, were taking him to a safe house in San Diego. But Vico didn't know that yet.
No.
I have to finish this. She stepped out of the car. The November wind cut through her jacket as she walked toward the warehouse. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she forced one foot in front of the other. The warehouse door was open, spilling yellow light into the darkness. Clara stepped inside. The space was cavernous, filled with rusting machinery and empty crates. In the center, under a flickering bulb, stood Vico Santoro. He was younger than she expected, maybe 40, handsome in an expensive suit, his dark hair slicked back. 2 men flanked him, their jackets bulging with concealed weapons. Ms. Martinez, Vico's smile was warm, friendly even. Thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult. Where's Adrian? Clara's voice echoed in the empty space.
Dead, you said.
In the alley, Vico tilted his head. Though we never found a body. Funny, that. I buried him. In the Angeles National Forest. Off Route 2, Mile marker 47". The lie came smoothly. Morrison had prepared her for this. I panicked. Didn't want the police finding him in my apartment. You buried a 6'2" man by yourself. Fear's a good motivator. Vico laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know what I think? I think Adrian's alive. I think he's hiding, and I think you know where. Then you think wrong. Clara held up the flash drive. This is what you want, right? The evidence? Adrian gave it to me before he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should use it as insurance. Insurance against what? Against people like you coming after my son. Clara took a step forward. Here's the deal. You take this, you leave me and Leo alone, and we all pretend none of this ever happened. Vico studied her for a long moment. Then, he gestured to one of his men. Check it. The man pulled out a laptop, plugged in the drive. Clara's heart hammered as he clicked through folders. Empty. All empty. The man looked up at Vico and shook his head. Well, Vico said softly. That's disappointing. I need fresh air, Clara said quickly, too quickly. Vico smiled. I don't think so. One of the men grabbed her arm. Clara struggled, but he was too strong, forcing her toward a chair. This wasn't the plan. She was supposed to say the words and get out. Why weren't the police moving? Morrison, she shouted. Morrison, help. Vico's smile widened. The police can't hear you, Ms. Martinez. These walls are reinforced concrete, 2 feet thick. Even with your little wire. He reached into her collar, ripped out the device, crushed it under his heel. They won't know what's happening until it's too late. Clara's blood ran cold. You knew. We have people everywhere. Did you really think 2 detectives could set up an operation like this without us noticing? Vico crouched in front of her.
Now.
Let's try this again.
Where is
Adrian? I told you. The slap came so fast she didn't see it. Her head snapped to the side, stars exploding across her vision. Wrong answer. Vico grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. Adrian has the real evidence, doesn't he? Copies, backups. He's too smart to give you the only one. So where is he? Go to hell. Outside, she heard the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Vico's head snapped up. More shots, rapid and close. Boss, one of the men said urgently. We've got company. The police? No, the man was listening to something on his radio, his face going pale. It's our guys. Someone's taking them out. Vico stood, pulling a gun from his jacket. How many? I don't. The man's head exploded in a spray of red. He dropped, and Clara saw the bullet hole in the warehouse window behind him. Vico dove for cover, dragging Clara with him. The second man fired blindly toward the windows. Then he too went down, a red flower blooming on his chest. In the sudden silence, Clara heard footsteps.
slow,
Deliberate. Coming from the darkness at the far end of the warehouse. A figure emerged into the light, and Clara's breath caught. Adrian Moretti, dressed in black tactical gear, a rifle in his hands. His face was hard, cold, nothing like the wounded man she'd helped. This was the enforcer, the heir to a criminal empire. This was who he really was. Hello, Vico, Adrian said quietly. You're supposed to be dead.
funny.
I thought the same about you. Adrian's eyes flicked to Clara. You okay? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Let her go, Adrian said to Vico. This is between you and me. Vico laughed, pressing his gun against Clara's temple. I don't think so. She's my insurance now. You want her alive? You put down the rifle, and... The shot was impossibly precise. Vico's gun flew from his hand, his fingers shattered. He screamed, stumbling back, and Clara scrambled away. Adrian advanced, rifle trained on Vico. I said let her go. Adrian, please. Vico was clutching his ruined hand, blood pouring between his fingers. We can work this out. The family needs you. Uncle Carlo, he's willing to forgive. Forgive. Adrian's voice was ice. Forgive trying to kill me? Forgive threatening an innocent woman and her child. He stopped a few feet away. Or forgive what you did to David Martinez. Vico's eyes widened. That wasn't me. That was Vincent. On your orders, Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger. I found the texts, Vico. The ones you deleted. You told Vincent to eliminate the informant. You told him to make it look like an accident. And when Vincent hesitated, you told him you'd handle it yourself if he was too weak. You have no proof. I have all the proof I need. Adrian lowered the rifle slightly. And so do the police. Everything's uploaded. Cloud storage, encrypted servers sent to 3 different law enforcement agencies. Even if you kill me right now, it's over. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Vico looked toward the door, calculating odds. Don't, Adrian warned. But Vico ran anyway, sprinting for the exit. Adrian didn't shoot. He just watched as Vico burst through the door and straight into a wall of SWAT officers. The takedown was swift and brutal. Clara stood on shaking legs. You came. After everything, you came? I couldn't leave you alone in this. Adrian lowered the rifle, suddenly looking exhausted.
I'm sorry, Clara.
For all of it. For David, for bringing this to your door, for... Hands up. Drop the weapon. Morrison and a dozen officers poured through the door, guns drawn. Adrian carefully set down the rifle, raising his hands. It's over, he said quietly. I'm Adrian Moretti, and I'm surrendering myself to police custody. Morrison moved forward with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. I waive my rights. I want to confess. All of it. Adrian's eyes met Clara's one last time. And I want to testify against everyone involved in David Martinez's murder. As they led him away, Clara sank to the floor, her whole body shaking. Chun knelt beside her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. You did good, the detective said softly. Your son's safe. It's over. But Clara wasn't sure it would ever really be over. Not while David's ghost still lingered in every shadow. Not while Adrian's confession echoed in her ears. Not while the truth continued to unfold like a poisonous flower, revealing new horrors with every petal. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of police stations, lawyers, and statements. Clara repeated her story so many times it stopped feeling real. The alley, the blood, Adrian's confession, Vico's threats. Each telling stripped away another layer of emotion until she was reciting facts like a grocery list. Leo remained in San Diego with Rachel, and Clara had never been more grateful for the distance. She called him every night, listening to him chatter about the beach and Rachel's dog and the ice cream they'd had for dinner, normal things that felt like a lifeline to sanity. On the 4th day, Detective Morrison called her to the station. We need you to identify something, he said, his voice strange.
Careful.
Clara's stomach dropped. What is it? Just come down. Please. The medical examiner's office was in the basement, sterile and cold. Morrison led her to a viewing room with a glass window. On the other side was a body on a gurney, covered with a white sheet. We found him 2 hours ago, Morrison said quietly. At the docks, in the water. He'd been shot twice in the chest. We need you to confirm it's him. Clara's hands went numb. Adrian? Just look. Please. The medical examiner pulled back the sheet. Adrian Moretti's face was pale, his lips blue, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes were closed, and he looked almost peaceful, like he was sleeping. Clara felt the room tilt. I don't understand. He was in custody. You arrested him. He was being transported to federal holding this morning. The van was ambushed on the I-10. 3 officers wounded, 2 dead. Adrian was taken. Morrison's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. We found him 4 hours later. Someone wanted to make sure he never testified. But Vico's in jail. You have him. Vico's just one piece. The Moretti family is bigger than him. Morrison pulled the sheet back up, covering Adrian's face. We think it was Carlo Moretti himself. Adrian's uncle. He ordered the hit to prevent Adrian from testifying and to send a message. Clara stared at the white sheet, her mind refusing to process. Adrian had saved her, had confessed everything, had tried to make things right. And now he was dead anyway. "I'm sorry," Morrison said. "I know you two that there was." "We weren't anything," Clara's voice was hollow. "He killed people. He was a criminal. He was also trying to change." To make amends, Morrison touched her shoulder gently. "That counts for something."
Did it?
Clara didn't know anymore. She left the morgue and drove aimlessly for an hour, ending up at Holy Name Church without meaning to. Father Miguel found her sitting in an empty pew, staring at nothing. "I heard," he said softly, settling beside her. "The news is everywhere. Adrian Moretti, killed in transit. They're calling it an execution." "He died for nothing," Clara whispered. "David died for nothing. All of it. Meaningless." "That's not true. Isn't it? The Morettis are still out there. Carlo's still free. Vico will probably get some plea deal and be out in 5 years. Nothing changed." Father Miguel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Clara, may I show you something?" He led her to his office and pulled up a news article on his computer. The headline read, "Massive FBI raid nets 14 Moretti family members." Clara leaned closer, reading. The raid had happened this morning, simultaneous strikes across Los Angeles. Carlo Moretti, 3 captains, 10 associates, all arrested. The article cited evidence provided by a confidential informant and extensive documentation of criminal activities. "Adrian's testimony," Morrison said from the doorway. Clara spun around. "We've been keeping it quiet, but the raid was based on everything Adrian gave us. The flash drive, the recordings, his written confession. Before they killed him, he'd already signed affidavits, given depositions. We have enough to put Carlo away for life. But Adrian's dead. You said you needed him to testify. We needed him to corroborate the physical evidence, and he did. Hours of recorded testimony before the transport. He knew they'd try to kill him, so he made sure everything was documented and legally binding before they got the chance." Morrison's smile was grim. "He played them, made them think they could silence him, then had the last word from beyond the grave." Clara sat down slowly, her mind reeling. "He planned his own death." "I think he accepted it was inevitable," Morrison said. "After he saved you at the warehouse, after he surrendered, he knew the family would never let him testify. So he gave us everything we needed, then let them think they'd won. The ambush, the killing, it gave us probable cause for the raid. If Adrian had just testified in court, we'd have spent years in appeals. This way, we caught them all red-handed trying to cover up a murder." Father Miguel crossed himself. He sacrificed himself. For justice. For David. For you and Leo. Clara felt tears burning her eyes. "I threw him out. I told him I never wanted to see him again. And he saved you anyway." Morrison handed her a manila envelope. "He left this with his lawyer. Instructions to give it to you if anything happened to him." Clara's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photo showed a young Adrian, maybe 20, standing next to a small boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old. The boy was grinning, holding a toy fire truck. Adrian's smile was genuine, unguarded, nothing like the careful mask she'd seen. The letter was written in Adrian's precise handwriting. "Clara, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for that, not because I fear death, but because I wanted to see you and Leo truly safe before I left. The photo is of me and my nephew, Marco. He died in a house fire when he was 6. I tried to save him. I was too late. I've been too late for everyone I've tried to protect. When I saw Leo's drawing, the fire truck, the fire, the crying child, it brought everything back. The guilt, the failure, the knowledge that I couldn't save the people who mattered. But maybe I could save you. And him. Everything I've done, the evidence, the confession, the testimony, it's as much for David as it is for you. Your husband was brave enough to stand against my family. I owed him a debt I could never repay in life. Perhaps in death, I can balance the scales. Tell Leo that Mr. A said goodbye. Tell him to keep drawing, keep seeing the truth that adults miss. And tell him that fire trucks are for heroes, and his father was one. You gave mercy to a man who didn't deserve it. Let me return it the only way I can, by making sure you never have to look over your shoulder again. The Moretti family dies with me.
Adrian.
P.S. There's a trust fund for Leo's education. No criminal money. It's from my mother's side. Clean inheritance. My lawyer has the details. Please don't refuse it. Let some good come from my life. Clara read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Morrison and Father Miguel waited in silence. Finally, she folded the letter carefully and tucked it back in the envelope with the photo. When's the funeral? No funeral, Morrison said quietly. No family claimed the body. He'll be cremated. City burial. No, Clara stood, wiping her eyes. That's not right. David would want. She stopped, steadied her voice. He deserves better than that. Father Miguel nodded slowly. I can arrange something. A small service. Private. Thank you. Clara left the church and drove to San Diego, to Rachel's house, to her son. When Leo ran into her arms, she held him tight and didn't let go for a long time. That night, after Leo fell asleep, Clara sat on Rachel's porch and looked at the stars. She thought about David, about Adrian, about 2 men who'd tried to do the right thing in different ways. Both had paid with their lives. But Leo was safe. The Morettis were finished. And somewhere, maybe, David and Adrian had found the peace they'd never had in life. Clara touched the envelope in her pocket and whispered to the night sky, "Thank you, both of you." The stars offered no answer, but somehow, that was enough. 3 weeks later, Clara stood in front of a storage unit on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The key had arrived in a package from Adrian's lawyer, along with the trust fund documents and a single typed instruction, "When you're ready." She wasn't sure she'd ever be ready, but she was here anyway. The storage unit door rolled up with a metallic screech, revealing neat rows of filing boxes, each labeled with dates and names. Clara stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the small space. Morrison had told her about this place. Adrian had rented it 5 years ago, long before David's death, long before everything fell apart. It was his insurance policy, his escape route, documentation of every crime, every transaction, every dirty secret the Moretti family had buried. Clara opened the first box. Financial records from offshore accounts. She recognized some of the names from news reports, politicians, judges, police captains. People who should have stopped the Morettis but had been bought instead. The second box contained photographs. Crime scenes that had been ruled accidents or suicides. She saw Vincent Giordano in several, always in the background, always carefully out of focus. Except in one photo, dated 2 months before David's death, where Vincent was clear as day standing over a body in an alley. The third box made her stop breathing. It was labeled simply, David Martinez. Inside were dozens of folders, organized chronologically. Clara's hands trembled as she pulled out the first one. Inside was a copy of David's initial contact with the FBI, his offer to help Teresa Giordano, his agreement to gather evidence. But there were other documents too. Notes in Adrian's handwriting, warnings he'd tried to send through intermediaries. Vincent's escalating. Target acquisition confirmed. Need to pull informant immediately. And responses from people whose names were redacted. Source is valuable. Continue monitoring. They'd known. The FBI had known David was in danger and hadn't pulled him out. Clara sank to the floor, rifling through more files. There were transcripts of conversations Adrian had recorded. Vincent plotting David's murder, Carlo giving approval, Vico orchestrating the timing. And through it all, Adrian trying to delay, deflect, warn. One transcript made her stop cold. It was dated 3 days before David died. Adrian, this is wrong. Martinez is just trying to help a woman and her kid. Carlo, he's seen too much. He knows too much. You want him to testify against us? Against your own blood? Adrian, there are other ways. We can disappear. Start over somewhere. Carlo, you're weak. Just like your father. This is why Vincent handles the hard jobs. Adrian, if you do this, I'm out. I'm done with the family. Carlo, you're never done with family, Adrian. Blood is forever. Now get out of my sight before I forget you're my nephew. Clara pressed her fist against her mouth, stifling a sob. Adrian had tried. He'd actually tried to save David, tried to stop it, and been overruled by the very people who were supposed to be his family. The last folder in the box contained something that broke her completely. A handwritten letter from Adrian, dated 2 weeks after David's funeral. It had never been sent. Dear Mrs. Martinez, you don't know me and you never should. But I was there the night your husband died. I tried to pull him from the car. I was too late. I know this is meaningless, but I'm sorry. Your husband was brave. He was good. He was everything I'm not, and never will be. I can't undo what my family did, but I can make sure it means something. I'm collecting evidence. Everything they've ever done. Everyone they've hurt. Someday, I'll bring them all down. For David. For Teresa and her daughter. For every innocent person who got caught in our war. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that someone remembers. Someone knows your husband died a hero. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. A stranger who failed you. Clara clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. All this time, she thought Adrian was just another criminal trying to save himself. But he'd been carrying this guilt for 3 years, documenting every crime, building a case against his own family, all because he couldn't save one good man. She spent the next hour going through the rest of the boxes. There were dozens of them, enough evidence to prosecute hundreds of crimes, implicate hundreds of people. Adrian had been meticulous, obsessive, turning his guilt into a crusade. The last box contained something different. Personal items. A rosary. A photo album. The picture of young Adrian with his nephew Marco, along with others, family gatherings, holidays, moments before everything went wrong. At the bottom was a leather journal. Clara opened it to the first page. This is a record of my sins. If I die before I can make amends, let this stand as my confession. She flipped through the pages. Adrian had documented everything. Every person he'd hurt, every crime he'd committed, every order he'd followed. But interspersed with the confessions were entries about trying to change, about moments of doubt, about the growing realization that he was trapped in a life he'd never chosen. The last entry was dated the day before she'd found him in the alley. Vico knows. The meeting tomorrow is a trap. I'm not walking away from this one. But maybe that's okay. Maybe this is the only way to truly break free. Die as Adrian the criminal. Rise as evidence against everyone who made me into this. I'm tired of being too late. Tired of failing everyone who needed me. If I can save one person, just one, before I go, maybe that's enough. Maybe Clara Martinez and her son can have the peace I took from them. Maybe that's my redemption. Clara closed the journal, her vision blurred with tears. She pulled out her phone and called Morrison. I found Adrian's storage unit, she said when he answered. You need to see this. All of it. Is it bad? Clara looked around at the boxes, at the years of evidence, at the proof of Adrian's desperate attempt to balance the scales. It's everything. Every name, every crime, every person who needs to answer for what they've done. We'll send a team. Morrison? Clara interrupted. There are FBI names in here too. People who knew David was in danger and didn't protect him. Silence on the other end. Then, I'll come myself. With people I trust. After she hung up, Clara sat among the boxes and waited. She thought about David, who tried to save one woman and ended up exposing an empire. She thought about Adrian, who tried to save everyone and destroyed himself in the process. And she thought about Leo, safe in San Diego, drawing pictures of heroes and fire trucks, still innocent enough to believe good always won. Clara pulled out the photo of Adrian and Marco, studying Adrian's young, unguarded face. Before the weight of family expectations. before the violence and guilt. Just a young man holding his nephew's hand, both of them smiling. "You did it," she whispered to the photo. "You weren't too late this time. You saved us." Outside, she heard cars pulling up. Morrison and his team, ready to collect years of evidence, ready to bring down everyone who'd escaped justice. Clara stood, brushing off her jeans. She had one more stop to make before going back to San Diego. One more person who deserved to know the truth. She locked the storage unit and drove across the city to Evergreen Cemetery, to the modest headstone that marked David's grave. Someone had left fresh flowers. Clara knelt, touching the cold marble, and pulled out Adrian's unsent letter. "I found him, David," she said softly. "The man you said to trust. You were right about him. He wasn't perfect, but he tried. God, he tried so hard." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of jasmine. "It's over now. All of it. Leo's safe. The Morettas are finished. And Adrian," her voice broke. "Adrian made sure your death mattered. Made sure you didn't die for nothing." Clara placed the letter on the grave, weighing it down with a smooth stone. Then she stood, wiping her eyes. "I love you," she whispered. "Always." As she walked back to her car, Clara felt something shift inside her. The weight she'd been carrying for 3 years, the anger, the confusion, the betrayal, it didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip. She had answers now. She had justice. She had the truth. And somehow that was enough to start healing. 6 months later, Clara stood outside Murphy's diner with a paintbrush in her hand, staring at the freshly painted sign above the door. The old flickering letters were gone, replaced by bright blue script that read, "Leo's place." "Mom, you spelled it right, didn't you?" Leo called from inside, where he was helping arrange tables. Clara smiled. "Yes, baby. I spelled it right." The renovation had taken 3 months, and every penny she'd saved, plus some help from an unexpected source. The insurance money from David's death, which she'd never been able to touch, had finally felt right to use. And the trust fund from Adrian. After weeks of wrestling with her conscience, she'd accepted it, but only for Leo's education and this one dream. A second chance. That's what the diner represented. Rachel had driven up from San Diego to help with the grand reopening. She emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of fresh coffee cups. The espresso machine works perfectly. Adrian's lawyer knew what he was doing with that equipment list. Clara had found the list tucked into the trust fund documents, detailed recommendations for commercial kitchen equipment, sustainable suppliers, even menu suggestions. Adrian had thought of everything, planned for a future he'd never see. He would have liked this, Father Miguel said, arriving with a box of pastries from the church bake sale. A place of community, of hope. He was a criminal, Clara said automatically, though the words had lost their edge. He was a man who made terrible choices, then tried to unmake them. The priest set down the box. That's the definition of redemption, Clara. Not perfection, but the attempt to be better. The bell above the door chimed. Detective Morrison entered, Chun right behind him. Both were in civilian clothes, smiling. "We heard there was a grand opening," Morrison said. "Thought we'd show support. And get free coffee," Chun added with a grin. Clara poured them each a cup. "Any news on the trials?" Morrison's smile faded slightly. "Carlo Moretti was sentenced yesterday. Life without parole. Vico got 30 years. We're still working through the others, but every single person Adrian documented is either in custody or on the run." "The FBI agents?" Clara asked quietly. 3 suspended, pending investigation. 2 already resigned. Morrison's voice was hard. "They failed David. They'll answer for it." Clara nodded, feeling a small piece of justice click into place. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Mrs. Chin arrived with her entire book club. Officer Boyd, Marcus's father, came in sheepishly to apologize for his son's comments and ended up staying for lunch. The diner filled with neighbors, regulars from Murphy's old days, and new faces drawn by curiosity. Leo worked the room like a natural host, chatting with customers, showing off the new sign, telling everyone his dad would have loved this place. Clara watched him with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. He was so much like David, kind, brave, seeing the good in everything. Around 2 p.m., during a brief lull, Clara stepped outside for air. The Los Angeles afternoon was warm, the street busy with life. She leaned against the brick wall, letting the sun warm her face. "Excuse me?" Clara opened her eyes. A woman stood nearby, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a little girl clutching her hand. The girl was about 8, with dark curls and a shy smile. "Are you Clara Martinez?" the woman asked.
Yes.
"Can I help you?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My name is Teresa Giordano. This is my daughter, Sophia. I heard about the diner, about what happened with Adrian and the trials. I wanted to come thank you." Clara's breath caught. David helped you. He saved our lives." Teresa's voice shook. "We've been in Oregon, new names, new life. But when I heard about Adrian's testimony, about how he'd exposed everyone," she wiped her eyes. "Your husband died protecting us. And Adrian, he made sure Vincent could never hurt us again." Sophia tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, can I tell her?" Teresa nodded, and Sophia stepped forward. "Mr. Adrian found us 2 years ago. He came to our house in Oregon and told Mama he was sorry. He gave us money for college for me. And he said," Sophia's small voice was clear and serious, "he said my life mattered, that what his family did was wrong, that he'd make it right." Clara knelt down to Sophia's level. "He did make it right. Both of them did. Your life matters very much." Teresa pulled an envelope from her purse. "Adrian gave this to me. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should bring it to you." She handed it over. "I'm sorry it took so long. I was scared to come back to Los Angeles. But I needed you to know that David's sacrifice wasn't in vain. We're alive because of him." After Teresa and Sophia left, with promises to return for dinner sometime, Clara sat at a corner booth and opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, Adrian's handwriting familiar now. "Clara, if Teresa found you, it means I'm gone." "Good. That means she's safe enough to travel, which means the family is truly finished. I want you to know something. When I found Teresa and Sophia in Oregon, I saw what David had given his life for. A mother and daughter, safe and happy, building a normal life. It was the first time I understood what real courage looked like. Not violence, not power, but sacrifice for someone else's future. Your diner, Leo's place, it's perfect. A place where people can come and feel safe. Where second chances are served with coffee and kindness. David would be proud. I never got to tell you this in person, so I'll say it now. Thank you for seeing me as human. Even when you knew what I was, what I'd done, you still treated me with dignity. That one night in your apartment, eating those eggs, watching you with Leo, it reminded me what I'd lost. What I'd thrown away when I chose my family over my conscience. You gave me something I thought was gone forever. Hope that change was possible. Live well, Clara. Raise Leo to be like his father, brave and good and true. And maybe, sometimes, when you pour coffee and feed the hungry and make people smile, think about the fact that you saved a man who didn't deserve saving. And that man spent his last days making sure you'd never be afraid again. Thank you for mercy.
Adrian.
Clara read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and tucked it into her apron pocket. She looked around the diner, at the customers laughing, at Leo refilling water glasses with intense concentration, at the life she was building from the ruins of the old one.
The bell chimed.
More customers. Clara stood, wiping her eyes, and grabbed a menu. "Welcome to Leo's place," she said with a genuine smile. "What can I get for you today?" As she took orders and poured coffee and moved through the familiar rhythms of diner work, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace. Not the absence of pain. That would always be there, a dull ache where David should be. But peace with the truth. Peace with the complexity of men like Adrian, who could be both monster and savior. Peace with the knowledge that sometimes redemption came too late to save the Redeemer, but not too late to matter. That night, after the last customer left and Leo was asleep in the apartment upstairs, Clara stood in the empty diner and looked at the photo she'd hung behind the counter. David in his community service uniform, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Next to it, she'd hung something else. The photo of young Adrian with his nephew Marco, both smiling, before violence and guilt had stolen everything. "You're both here," she whispered to the photos. "Both of you watching over us. Both of you reminding me that people are complicated, that grace matters, that love is stronger than death." She locked up the diner and climbed the stairs to her apartment, to her son, to the future they were building. Behind her, the sign glowed in the darkness. Leo's Place. A diner of second chances. A monument to the men who died trying to do the right thing. And a promise that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. 1 year after opening, Leo's Place had become more than just a diner. It was a neighborhood fixture, a gathering place, a small beacon of hope on a street that had seen too much darkness. Clara was wiping down the counter on a rainy Thursday evening when she noticed him. A man in a dark coat, standing across the street under the awning of the closed hardware store. He'd been there for 10 minutes, just watching the diner through the rain-streaked windows. Not moving, not threatening, just watching. Her heart seized. After a year of peace, the old fear came roaring back. She reached for her phone, Morrison's number on speed dial. But something made her pause. The way the man stood, shoulders slightly hunched against the rain. The way he kept his distance, careful not to alarm. There was something familiar about the posture, the careful stillness. The dinner rush had ended. Only 2 customers remained, Mrs. Chin nursing her decaf and reading a mystery novel, and old Mr. Kowalski working on the crossword puzzle he did every night. Leo was upstairs doing homework. Clara made a decision. She grabbed an umbrella and stepped outside. The man saw her coming and tensed, ready to leave. But he didn't run. As she got closer, Clara's steps faltered. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But in the glow of the streetlight, she saw his face clearly. Older, thinner, with a beard he hadn't had before and different colored hair. But the eyes were the same. Dark, haunted, carrying the weight of too many ghosts. Adrian. The word came out as barely a whisper. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. His voice was rougher, like he hadn't used it much. "I shouldn't have come. I needed to see that you were okay." Clara's mind reeled. "You're dead." "I identified your body," Morrison said. "You identified a body that looked enough like me to fool people who wanted to believe I was dead." Adrian's smile was sad. "Vika wasn't the only one who could arrange things. I had help. People who owed me favors. People who believed in what I was trying to do. The FBI. Some retired agents who were tired of watching good people like David get sacrificed. They helped stage the ambush, helped me disappear. My testimony was already recorded, my evidence submitted. I was more valuable as a ghost than a witness." He looked at the diner, at the glowing sign. "I've been following the news. The trials, the convictions. It worked. The family's gone. Why come back now?" Clara's voice shook with emotions she couldn't name. Anger, relief, confusion, something else she didn't want to examine. "Because I'm leaving."
For real this time.
"Tomorrow I get on a plane to somewhere very far away, somewhere I can disappear completely. But I couldn't go without." He stopped, swallowed hard. "Without seeing that my death meant something. That you and Leo were safe and happy." Clara studied his face, this man who'd been dead for a year, who'd sacrificed everything to protect them. "You could have stayed dead. You didn't have to come back, even for this." "I know." Adrian's eyes met hers, and in them she saw the same desperate need for absolution she'd seen that first night in her apartment. "But I realized something. You gave me mercy when I was dying in that alley. The least I could do was give you closure. Let you know that the sacrifice was real, that you weren't just another casualty in my family's war. You're not him anymore, are you? Clara said softly. The man who ran the Moretti family. The enforcer. That person really did die. Yeah, Adrian's voice was rough with emotion.
He did.
I don't know who I am now, but I'm trying to figure it out. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere far from all of this. They stood in silence, rain pattering on the umbrella Clara held over both of them. Inside the diner, Mrs. Chen looked up from her book, then discreetly looked away. Leo asks about you sometimes, Clara said finally. About Mr. A. He says you were nice. Adrian's face crumpled for just a moment. How is he? He's good. Smart, brave. Growing up too fast, Clara smiled despite everything. He still draws. Started a comic book about a superhero who helps people even though everyone thinks he's the bad guy. That sounds like Leo. Adrian took a step back into the shadows. I should go. I've already stayed too long. Clara caught his arm. He froze, looking at her hand on his sleeve like it was something miraculous. Thank you. For everything. For David's justice. For our safety. For trying. I was too late to save him, Adrian said, his voice breaking. But not too late to save us. Clara released his arm. That counts for something. That counts for everything. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a worn stuffed rabbit. Identical to Leo's, Mr. Hoppy. I noticed Leo's was getting pretty threadbare. This one. Adrian's voice was thick. This was Marco's. My nephew. I've been carrying it for 15 years, like a talisman. Like if I held on to it, I could somehow protect him retroactively. He held it out. But I think it should go to someone who's still here. Someone whose life I actually managed to protect. Clara took the rabbit, her eyes burning. He'll love it. Tell him. Adrian stopped, then tried again. Tell him Mr. A said to keep being brave. And to take care of his mom. I will. Adrian stepped fully into the rain, no longer protected by the umbrella. Goodbye, Clara. Live well. Be happy. Forget about ghosts. Some ghosts are worth remembering, Clara said softly. He smiled, a real smile, sad but genuine, and then he turned and walked away into the rain. Clara watched until he disappeared around the corner, a shadow dissolving into shadows. She stood there for a long moment, holding Marco's rabbit, rain misting around the umbrella's edge. Then she turned back to the diner, to the warm light spilling onto the wet pavement, to the life waiting inside. Mrs. Chun had paid her bill and left quietly. Mr. Kowalski was gathering his things. Clara locked the door behind him, flipped the sign to closed, and climbed the stairs to her apartment. Leo was at the kitchen table, surrounded by colored pencils and paper, working on his comic book. He looked up when she entered. Mom, you're all wet. Just stepped outside for a minute. Clara set Marco's rabbit on the table. Look what I found in the storage room. Must have been there from Murphy's old days. Thought you could give it to Mr. Hoppy as a friend. Leo's face lit up. He picked up the rabbit, examining it carefully. It looks old, like it has stories. I think it does, Clara said, running her fingers through his hair. Very old stories. But maybe it's ready for some new ones. Cool. Leo set the rabbit next to Mr. Hoppy, arranging them like they were having conversation. They can be brothers. Like superheroes have sidekicks. Clara kissed the top of his head. Exactly like that. That night, after Leo fell asleep with both rabbits tucked under his arms, Clara stood by the window looking out at the rain-soaked street. Somewhere out there, Adrian Moretti, or whoever he was now, was beginning a new life. A quiet life. A life earned through sacrifice and pain, and the desperate attempt to balance impossible scales. She touched the glass, her breath fogging it slightly. Goodbye, she whispered. And thank you. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, carrying away the last traces of blood and guilt and ghosts that had haunted this place for too long. In the morning, Clara would open the diner again. Customers would come. Coffee would brew. Life would continue in its beautiful, messy, complicated way. Leo would grow up surrounded by love and safety, never knowing the full truth of the man who'd helped save him. And somewhere, in some quiet corner of the world, a man who'd once been a monster would try to become something else. Something better. Not seeking forgiveness, that was impossible, but seeking peace. Clara turned away from the window and climbed into bed. For the first time in years, she fell asleep easily, without checking the locks twice, without listening for footsteps in the alley, without fear pressing down on her chest. The ghosts were finally quiet. The dead were finally at rest. And the living, they were learning slowly to do what seemed impossible a year ago. They were learning to live again. Outside, the rain stopped. Stars broke through the clouds. And on the street below, the sign for Leo's place glowed softly in the darkness, a promise kept, a life honored, a future built on the ruins of the past. A diner of second chances, where mercy was served alongside coffee, where redemption, however late, however incomplete, was always possible, where ghosts came to say goodbye, and where, finally, the living could be at peace. The end.